Well, forever, really. Fighting poverty has been all about big ideas and good intentions. But here's the thing. What if good intentions just aren't enough? Today, we're going to talk about the scientist who came along and demanded actual proof and ended up changing millions of lives. This is the story of Esther Duflo.
Okay, let's just start with a number. A huge number that really frames this whole story. 700 million.
And that isn't just some abstract statistic. That's the number of people right now living in what's called extreme poverty. It's a massive, staggering challenge, one that honestly has stumped some of the best and brightest for generations.
Which brings us to the really crucial question, right? For decades, we've poured billions and billions of dollars into all sorts of aid programs, all driven by these big ideas. But how do we know what's actually working? Not just what we think should work, but what's really making a difference on the ground.
So what we're talking about here is a huge shift in thinking. I mean, you've got the old way, right? It was all about these grand, top-down theories, these big ideas. But then there's this new way, and it demands something totally different. Hard evidence, proof. It's about testing things on a small scale to see what actually works before you even think about rolling it out everywhere.
And you know, the person who was really at the heart of this whole revolution, well, she wasn't your typical economist at all. She came at it from a completely different angle. Yeah, Esther Duflo, she didn't even start in economics. She was actually a history student, and she was really driven by this desire to be a changemaker. She even said in her Nobel lecture that she was pretty skeptical of economists. She kind of saw them as people who just justified why the world is the way it is. But that skepticism, it actually pushed her down this whole new path. She got her PhD from MIT and then co-founded the Poverty Action Lab. We call it JPOW, which became this amazing hub for this new evidence-first way of thinking. And the idea she and her colleagues put forward, it was so simple, but at the time it was totally revolutionary. They basically said, let's stop arguing about these giant untestable theories. Instead, let's start treating social policies like we treat new medicines. You know, stop guessing, start testing. The main tool they use to do this is something called a randomized controlled trial, or an RCT. And honestly, the easiest way to think about it is it's just like a medical trial. Seriously, you take a big group of people who are all facing the same problem. You randomly give some of them the new program, that's your treatment group, and the others, they don't get it. That's your control group. Then you compare them. And by doing that, you can figure out with real scientific certainty if the program actually worked. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's take a look at a fantastic case study from schools in India that shows just how powerful this can be.
So, researchers went into these schools in India, and they found a huge problem. I mean, kids were in their seats, they were showing up to school, but they just weren't learning. Get this, almost half of the kids in grade 5 couldn't even read a book meant for a grade 2 student. So what on earth was going on?
Well, after looking closely, the team figured out the core issue. The curriculum, the way it was set up, it was really only for the top students. Everyone else was just getting left behind. So they came up with an idea, an intervention they called teaching at the right level. The whole point was to give kids extra tutoring based on what they actually knew, not where the textbook said they should be. And then they ran the experiment. They gave the program to some schools but not others, and then they sat back and measured what happened.
And the results? Wow. They weren't just a little bit better, they were absolutely transformative. And the impact can be summed up in this one number: more than 5 million. That's how many kids in India have been helped by these tutoring programs that came directly out of this research. It just goes to show you the massive difference between something that's just a good idea and something that is a proven idea.
But this story, this amazing success, it wasn't just a one-off. It was actually part of a much, much bigger shift that was happening.
You know, when she accepted her Nobel Prize, Esther Duflo made this crystal clear. She said, and I quote, "This is a prize for a movement." She knew it wasn't just about her, it was about this whole community, hundreds of researchers and staff and partners all over the world who were all committed to this new way of doing things. So, just how big is that movement's impact? Well, you can measure it with another number. And this one is absolutely mind-blowing. 400 million.
That's right, 400 million people around the world have been touched by policies that were proven to work using one of these experiments from someone in the J-Pound network. It's just incredible proof of how this scientific approach has gone from these small, local experiments to shaping global policy.
And then, in 2019, this entire movement got the ultimate recognition. The big one. That was the year the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics to Esther Duflo alongside her longtime collaborators, Abhijit Banerjee and Michael Kremer. Now, you gotta listen closely to the reason they gave her the prize. It's super important. They didn't win for, solving poverty. They won, and this is the official quote, for their experimental approach to alleviating global poverty. The prize wasn't just for the amazing results. It was for the method, for the revolutionary idea itself. And of course, that Nobel Prize, it wasn't the end of the story. Not at all. It was more like a massive validation, one that really cemented this new way of thinking as the foundation for all the work that's still to come. I mean, think about it. In just a couple of decades, this whole approach has completely flipped the field on its head. Development economics is now this thriving, dynamic science based on experiments. It's given policymakers and aid workers this powerful new toolkit, not filled with vague theories, but with practical solutions that we know actually work. And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. This whole idea of breaking down huge problems, testing small solutions, and then scaling up what works, that's not just for fighting poverty, is it? So just imagine, what other huge, complex problems could we start to solve if we just got into the habit of asking that simple question, what truly works